Hi, my name is Roger Schlater. This video is actually about commercial loan collateral list, from what the banker wants to what he probably doesn't want. So anyway, the collateral list is for what's, the really great collateral to the not so good collateral. Anyway, when applying for a commercial loan, lenders almost always require some sort of collateral to secure the loan. The quality and acceptability of the collateral will vary widely depending on the lender's policy and the type of loan you're seeking. This is a list of common commercial loan collateral options, ranked from the best to the probably not so best. So anyway, number one, of course, is cash. Cash in the bank account, is highly liquid. And we're talking about like certificates of deposit. We're talking, any other form of collateral that is really highly liquid that is actually cash. It could be a savings account. Now, the one thing you got to remember when you're using cash, they very rarely, you would think they give you 100%. They usually won't. They'll give you 90 or 95%, and that 5 or 10% is used in case you don't meet the requirements of the loan. Well, there may be other charges that are put in there. So anyway, that's why they usually don't lend 100%. The other thing is that, if you have this in another bank, you are going to have to move it to the bank that you're getting the loan for. It isn't really good collateral if it's in another bank. They can't control it. They need to control it in their bank. Because if you don't pay this loan and they want to move on the collateral, they want to just go ahead and take it. And, you won't be able to access it after they take it. So anyway, the number two collateral would be real estate. And, we're a lot of times we're talking commercial real estate properties, especially those with a strong income history and a high appraised value. They're often accepted as collateral. Lenders may be more inclined to accept income generating properties because they would obviously sell quicker. The other thing that banks like a lot is they like homes. They like your home, or if you have a second home that you're renting out, they would absolutely love that too. They like those a little better because they are easier to move, easier to sell, and they actually, they understand them better. I mean, most banks can look at a property, especially a house, and they can tell exactly what it's worth, coming pretty close. So they really know the value of it. And they usually know how fast they could sell it too. And if they have to, they could buy it themselves and then sell it, at a more, at a leisurely rate, I guess you would say. Number three would be accounts receivable. If your business has a reliable stream of accounts receivable, and that is, accounts receivable is when your company makes that sale, but they don't get all the money at once. So they actually are going to get the money in a future time, usually in a matter of like 30, 60, 90 days. And lenders accept, this as collateral. However, the quality of those receivables, who it's from, how old it is, and that really matters on the collectability of it. So let's say you have a receivable from Walmart. Well, we don't know when you're going to get it. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, they would get it, but it sits as from Walmart. They know they're going to get it, so they know it's coming. So anyway, but the other part would be the age of it. Now, usually accounts receivable, bankers will ask you for a listing and aging of the accounts receivable. So the listing and aging would be a list of everybody who owes the money, how much it is, and then they would age it as to like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, and over 120 days. So basically the bank is looking for anything within 90 days, and they will give you a percentage of credit of the total of that 90 days of accounts receivable. So, and then they'll give you a percentage of that. So anyway, anything over 90 days is usually not considered good collateral unless the industry, accepts, 120 days, 150 days, then it would be okay. If the industry does it all the time, then it would be okay. But anyway, and they're not going to do anything unless they have that listing and aging of those receivables. Number four would be inventory. Inventory can be used as collateral, but it's generally considered less desirable, mainly because of the potential for obsolescence and lower liquidation value. I mean, if you have, inventory to build a product, well, obviously the product isn't built. You have parts, and those parts could be easy to move, could be harder to move, and you may not get full value for them either. So they a lot of times are harder to value. So they'll usually give you a percentage of that, just like they would of the accounts receivable, only with the inventory, 50%, on the dollar, 25%. I mean, they'd probably make it a lot lesser amount of collateral on that dollar value that you have. Number five and six, I would actually take. I had these listed because I got the research. I did the research, and this is kind of what I came up with from a number of sources. But anyway, number five, I'm going to say, is stocks and marketable securities. And it really depends on what marketable securities and what stocks, because their acceptability can depend on their market, how volatile it is and how their liquidity. So take an example, most of the stocks in the stock market, you can use Walmart again. Walmart stock is going to vary. It's going to go up and down, but it's not going to go up and down a whole lot. It's going to be a pretty steady stock, as some other larger stocks are. So if you would have this stock, they would give you usually they're not going to give you full value. They're probably going to give you around maybe, depending on how they value it, probably around 60%, maybe 70%. But it really does depend on the stock and on the company that stock is on. I do know in the past, UPS was not a public stock, and UPS employees used to get banks to lend on their stock, even though it was a private company. And banks used to value the UPS stock so much, basically just because it was such a good company, and they valued the company, and so they knew the stock was good, even though it was not a public stock. It was a private stock. So anyway, or private company. There are some ways you can use accounts payable and contracts. It really depends on what they are and how they're funded. Sometimes you can use them as collateral, but usually sometimes, like if you had a contract, to do something and it was worth something, then you could. But those are harder. It comes a case by case basis, and you're really going to look at it that way. Number 8 would be, actually I skipped one, and that was when I was jumping up to stocks and marketable securities. Equipment and machinery equipment, specifically equipment or machinery that can be pledged as collateral, but their value really depreciates over time, number one. Number two, they're harder to value. I mean, if you're making some sort of product and you have equipment, it really depends on what it is. I do know I had I had a project where I didn't make the loan, but I actually took over the loan, and it was basically they used embroidery equipment to embroider things, and they did a lot of other stuff, but the big equipment was the embroidery equipment. And that embroidery equipment was pledged as collateral, and so when they didn't pay that loan, we had to literally go and try to take possession of that equipment, and it was kind of difficult. I'll talk about it at the end of this video. So anyway, they're less favorable, machinery and equipment, just because hard to value. Who are you going to sell it to? Sometimes if you're in a recession, then nobody wants equipment, so it could be harder to get rid of. And then we're talking intellectual property. Intellectual property such as patents, trademarks, or copyrights, they can be used as collateral, but their value can be challenging to assess and may vary widely. I mean, it really depends. So it's very hard to value that, and sometimes you can value it with other companies that that deal in these things. You know, if you have companies that deal in patents and trademarks and copyrights, sometimes the attorneys can figure out, hey, you know, this is really worth some money. You know, if he goes out of business, he can always sell it to somebody else. So anyway, it can be worth something, but usually not as much as something that's really tangible that the bank can put their fingers on. Vehicles. While vehicles can be used as collateral, they're generally less preferred than, you know, real estate or cash equivalents due to their rapid depreciation. Now, I do know that a lot of small banks will take vehicles. You know, they know what they're worth. They can look it up exactly what they're worth at any point in time. They pretty much know what they can sell them for because they loan people money for vehicles all the time. So they really feel like they know that product. So they would use that a lot. I mean, you know, I've seen smaller banks when they'll take the vehicles as additional collateral. Number 10 is personal guarantees. Some lenders require personal guarantees from the business owners or individuals involved in the business. And this isn't a physical asset, so a lot of lenders don't really consider it a real form of collateral, but it can be. The biggest problem with this is that during the period after '08, when all the real estate values came down, I know we had in the bank I was at, we had a couple of individuals that did the like fix and flip houses. So they actually, you know, had when real estate values went down, then they got caught. They had too many loans on these assets that weren't worth anything. So they actually, we started looking at what they had on personal guarantees to go ahead and sue them for the personal guarantee for the assets that they had listed on their personal financial statement. Well, lo and behold, they had made up their whole personal financial statement. They had made up their tax returns. They made up everything. So anyway, if you don't check the validity of these things, and there's ways to check with IRS to make sure that the tax returns are correct. I think it's like a 4506T. You know, if you don't check to make sure these are correct, I mean, a lot of banks just go ahead and make these loans, you know, when you give them the personal financial. If they feel that it is, realistic, they'll just go ahead and use it. They don't really check on it that much. In all my years doing SBA loans, I only had SBA check the cash value once. They wanted evidence that the cash was there. And so anyway, a lot of times they don't really check it. So anyway, those individuals did go to jail, mail fraud, and they did. I think I talked to the son when he came out, but it's not a very good deal when you have to look people in the eye who have blatantly lied to you. I mean, that's not a good situation to be in. Anyway, there's a lot of loans that are made unsecured. In some cases, particularly for small business loans or lines of credit, lenders may provide unsecured loans where no specific collateral is required. These are riskier for the lenders and will definitely come with a higher interest rate. So anyway, they aren't done very often. Sometimes they're done with people who kind of had a good track record with the bank, and the bank will just say, hey, you know, this isn't that big of a loan, we'll just go ahead and do it unsecured. Number 12 would be intangible assets. Some of the intangible assets like goodwill or brand reputation, they're really difficult to value, so I really don't think anybody's going to give you any value for collateral by many lenders, but you might find one if you have a company that's got a very good reputation. You know, they're known in the community, then they may give them some value for that, but I really wouldn't count on it. So anyway, the 13 would be third-party guarantees. While not collateral in the traditional sense, like I said, the regular guarantee, a third-party guarantee would have to be from a very strong individual with a lot of assets individually, or from a business that is very sound, that has a lot of equity in their business and that's been around for a long time. So those are going to have to be above the value of an individual guarantee, these third-party guarantees. So they're hard to get because a lot of times these people don't want to give all their, they're risking all their assets for somebody else. And a lot of times they don't want to do it. So anyway, it is important to note that the acceptability of the collateral can really vary significantly between lenders and individual circumstances play a significant role in determining what collateral is most suited for a particular loan application. Additionally, lenders may require a combination of assets as collateral to mitigate risk. Always discuss your specific collateral options and requirements with your lender or financial advisor to determine the best approach for your situation. Now, I was going to cover the business we had that was in the embroidery business. Actually, it was my job to, we had talked to her because it was an SBA loan. We didn't sell off the guarantee. We had the guarantee. So we basically, it was my job to go ahead. I went ahead and rented a U-Haul. I had several of the lenders at our bank in real close proximity, and we got there in one afternoon, and then we went in. I drove up the U-Haul. I had 4 or 5 of my bank buddies meet me there right at the exact same time. We all entered the business, and we told the borrower that we were going to take the equipment and that it was ours. One of the things you don't think about in these situations is that the owner had cancer. Her daughter was there and her daughter's friend. All 3 of them were crying. It was a very, very hard situation. They finally called the Arnold police. That was the city it was in. The police showed up. We said we have every right to the equipment. They said they had a personal bankruptcy. We said this equipment is not personal. It is in the business. We have every right to it. We're going to load it up and we're going to take it. The police looked at us and they said, not today. And so, when the police say not today, then it's not today. So anyway, they weren't sure who to believe. But anyway, it was very difficult. It was a very difficult situation. And a lot of times when you start taking assets from people, if you have to physically take them from people, it is a very, very difficult situation. And especially when you got people crying and people screaming, and it just was pretty wild. What we ended up doing was we ended up selling to somebody who had took another business like it. The only problem is what you run into a lot of times, and what the bank isn't going to want, is that a lot of times, let's say you go out of business, you have this equipment. So you tell the banker, hey, I got this guy who wants to buy this equipment. So this guy's going to buy the equipment for, 30 cents on the dollar, maybe 50 cents on the dollar. And that's great. But then you find out later that he was a friend of your relatives, and he actually bought it, and then he's going to sell it back to you for that same amount. Meanwhile, the bank is out, 70% or something, or 50%. So anyway, banks are very particular who they sell it to when they're going to sell it to a third person, because a lot of times it's a friend of the owner who is trying to just buy back their stuff at a very, very, very cheap rate. So anyway, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to get all the new videos when published. Also, please like the video if you learned anything from this video. And my name is Roger Schlueter, and I will definitely see you in the next video. Thank you very much.